don't know.
Live!
Live!
Yay! Hello, ladies and gentlemen. We are the Young Adult at Heart book discussion, book club, I think is actually our name. And this week we read The Thrilling, oh, it's glary, The Thrilling Adventures, no, look at the glare, of Lovelace and Babbage. There she is. It's beautiful. By Sydney, I think it's Padua, I think is how you pronounce her last name.
Right.
Sure, let's go with yes. And so we are your hosts and your discussion people that you'll listen to for the next hour. Hi, I'm Jennifer. I am in Chicagoland, Illinois, and I am a librarian at a small branch library in Indiana. And whoever wants to introduce themselves next can do so.
I'm Abby, and I am a children's programming assistant at a small library in Connecticut. Hi, everybody. I go next. I'm Kim, currently reading the conclusion. I'm a children and teen librarian at a small library in Connecticut. Hello, world, because I missed you last time.
Hello. Hi. I don't have a microphone, so hopefully you can hear me. My name is Mylene, and I am a 75% children's and 25% teen librarian in California. Greetings.
Hi, I'm Crystal. I'm an 8th grade social studies teacher in Connecticut. Woohoo!
Yay! And so the book that we read this month was strange and intriguing. It was a little historical nonfiction, a lot historical science fiction, and so many endnotes. It's a graphic novel with sometimes mountains of text inside of the graphic novel, and sometimes most of the graphic novel and just little endnotes, and then giant appendices at the end. And so it was an interesting format. It was something really different, I thought. Do we have general impressions? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Tell me more.
I walked that line. I walked the line between love and hate, and I think so because I like graphic novels. When I read Roller Girl, I sent Abby text messages because I burst out into tears at the end because I was just like so moved by its like silly beauty. But I think my props, so like reading the like comic booky portions, I was like cool, but then I would get like pulled out of the story reading the footnotes. So I'm like reading and it's great, but then I'm like, oh, I have to, almost kind of how some of you guys felt about the videos pulling you out of the story of Skeleton Creek. Like that's kind of how I felt. I was like, I just want more like story because I'm losing myself. And that's how I felt. So the comic-y portions I love. So sometimes I find myself skipping the footnotes and I'd be like, I should go back and read them, but I don't want to. So that I didn't. So I probably missed some stuff. But sometimes I'd like read a footnote, like if something caught my attention. So I liked the comic portions, but like the footnote portions, I wasn't the biggest fan of. So it was a literal 50-50. Like I 50 liked it and I 50 was frustrated with it.
I digest it in very small doses, because I tried reading it like sitting for an hour and would also super duper get lost in the footnotes. Fascinated by them, but I was just like, what did I just read? Oh yeah, go back. And so what ended up happening was similar to Kim. I read it with the graphic novel portion by itself, kind of didn't go back for the footnotes half the time. Or I completely missed the graphic novel part. I was like, okay, I'm just gonna read the footnotes on this page. And truthfully, with like endnotes for stuff like this, didn't read it at all. Not even a little bit. I was like, it's fascinating someday. But I liked it. I thought it was really interesting. It gave light to something that I knew about. I actually had written a report about Babbage a long time ago. I was like, oh, Mylene in like 3rd grade appreciates this now as an adult Mylene. Yeah. So I liked it mostly.
Not to sound like a broken record, but I feel like I'm echoing a lot of the same sentiments in that, and I'm a social studies person, I'm a history person, and so I thought I really appreciate the level of research that clearly went into this. It's so apparent in all of these footnotes and in all of the endnotes and the appendices and like all this different stuff. It becomes really apparent, and Valley obviously thinks I'm getting attacked. Sorry, here she comes. It's really apparent that the research was really well done and thorough, and from a historian perspective, I really appreciate that, and I think it's great, but from like wanting it to be more of a graphic novel than like a history lesson, because again, I found the graphic novel parts of this for the most part really fun and really engaging, and I felt bogged down in footnotes sometimes. So that was me.
Me too. The same thing as everybody. But then also I thought there were some other things that I also thought contributed to kind of the weird pacing, in that at the beginning it seems like it's just going to be a kind of straightforward biographical account for like a long time before it turns into the like alternate universe section. So I was like prepared for that, and I actually enjoyed the footnotes during that part, because if you're like reading for content like that, like the historical content, it like makes sense to do it. But then you go into this like steampunky like alternate universe thing, and then it's also not just one story, it's like different comics. So like it was frustrating to me because after reading this whole big introduction, I was expecting more like of a through line or like a narrative, and then it was like a 3-page comic with then like 3 pages of endnotes, and it was very choppy instead of having it be like a biographical portion with some endnotes and some footnotes, and then like, and here's our pocket universe, like, and like either a through line or like similarly paced comics, I thought would have held my attention a little bit more. But I thought it was very charming, and like the illustrations are so cute. But yeah, similar qualms as everyone else.
So I'm gonna be the outlier for this. I read it in 2.5 sittings. Like I read almost the entire first half in like 1 or 2 days. Like just did it, and then I waited a super long time and I just finished the second half of the book over the last couple days. So I like stepping away from it and then coming back into it was easier because I left that historical portion. I'd read it so long ago that I left that historical portion behind. Like it was just in the back of my head as like context for the rest of the book, which actually I think really worked. And maybe that's because I'm not entirely sure whether the entire thing was done as a webcomic and then pulled and published. I didn't get the chance to really like poke into her website.
I read that in a very similar way, and I still had like I also read like the first part like in a chunk, and then the second part like way later. So I don't know. I think you just like the book better.
I probably did. I also really enjoyed like the Alice in Wonderland section of the book was probably one of my favorites, and I loved the interaction between the bottom notes. There's endnotes at the end, like in the appendices, and then what are the bottom parts called? They're footnotes, right? They're just footnotes?
Footnotes.
Okay, everybody's nodding. Good. There's the footnotes at the bottom, and I really liked the interaction between those footnotes and that section. And I think since that's the part that I most recently read, in addition to all of the end appendices, which I've read every single part of this book, and parts of it were not fun to do. So, but I did it because I knew it would bother me to not, like I knew that I wasn't going to go back later and do it, so I just did it. And so that was not, I think I would have probably enjoyed it better if everything, like as everybody has said, like if everything in that wasn't immediately relevant was an endnote instead of a footnote. But I loved that, like where she's talking to them and she like pulls the narrator up into the story. I thought that was really cool. And did everybody get the chance to read the very last part of it, the epilogue?
Just read
It's like the
it.
last. It's so cute. I really like them.
I think, and so like I don't like. It's not that I didn't like the story. Like I think there are a lot of parts of it that are really adorable, as well as like the illustrations, because I really loved the pipe that was like that she was smoking throughout the entire thing. Because I was like really waiting for her to say like Watson at some point. Like I was like, oh, it's like Sherlock Holmes. And because our Connecticut Library Association conference was through the Looking Glass and was Alice in Wonderland themed, and that was like last weekend. I really also appreciated the Alice in Wonderland bit. I was like, oh, flashbacks to a week ago. But I think, and the footnotes, the parts that I would read were very funny. Sometimes, most of the time, like. I don't know, there was some point in there where the footnotes were like, people often wonder, if, Babbage and Lovelace had some sort of affair, like really funny bits. But I maybe if the footnotes were all end notes, then it would have been better. But I think, like, first of all, I was confused over what end note meant. I was like, what does this mean? I don't understand. And it was just very overwhelming. Like, maybe if we could have, like, cut the end notes in half or like double spaced them or like something to make them more readable, because I just would look at those pages and I was like, oh my god, I feel like I'm in school. I feel like I'm in Crystal's history class.
I kind of wanted the alternate universe to not be historically accurate. Like while I started with, I really appreciate that she did all of this research and that it is so thorough. There's part of me that's just like, no, now that you've done all this research, write the rest of these alternate universe scenarios, like the Alice in Wonderland one, which I loved. There were a couple that I really loved. But I'm like, you don't need to then justify it with primary source text.
Or we don't need to see the legwork. Just
right.
do it and we'll get it. Like have
a
little bit.
And where the dialogue was pulled too, she was like, oh, this dialogue is based off of a letter, and it was just like, you could just let it, like, that would be cool to know at the end, I guess, like what parts, and then you could show us the letter rather than, which I think they did for some of it at the very end in those, like she had the primary sources.
Yeah, and again, as a history person, I think that that's really cool, and I'm really interested in that. And I still found it a little overwhelming, and at times a little. I was saying when I was first reading it, and it wasn't so much later, and maybe it's because I stopped reading the footnotes, but it almost felt a little like they were like showing off all of this like they had to justify. Like, she had to justify everything that she was doing and be like, look at all this research that went into it. And then there's also the side note of, no, it was probably that she was just excited because this is something that she's excited about. But it did feel a little like, no, look, I'm super legitimate. And I was just like, no, just let it be like a comic, you know what I mean? And let it be, yes, we will know that you have done your research because it will be so apparent in what you're writing. You don't need to put a footnote with every single thing that's said.
I think that you said, Jen, that this started as a webcomic, or like was a webcomic before it was published.
Yes, and then if you actually go to her website, there's a section of her website that's just for this, and it has some of the raw pages before, because she went and redid bunches of the pages because she shows a bunch of her first ones, and she hasn't, like, if there's stuff, really cool stuff, like she hadn't settled on a character design, so Babbage like looks different in every single panel, and her footnotes for those are that she's calling herself out on it. She's like, yeah, I hadn't quite decided what he looked like, so he just has all of the jaws in a row, every single jaw that one can have, that's what he does. Like,
well, I think that it would have been probably more digestible in like a weekly webcomic to like get a little snippet of a comic and then get information along with it. It's a lot more digestible in that format than like getting a book. Like the size of this thing is also ridiculous. Like just the trim size is huge, and I'm like trying to eat lunch and read it at the same time. Sorry, Ridgefield Library. But like it was just a little unwieldy.
That's a practical concern. Also, from like an accessibility point, I don't know that you could ever do, not that you would need to not that you could ever do just like an audio version of this, because so much of it is the visual components of it, and having. And I loved how some of her backgrounds were actually pictures and like newspaper backgrounds and like diagrams. I thought that was super cool. But but even from just like an accessibility, like a visually impaired point of view, like the type was very, very small. Did anybody do this as an ebook, or is it even available as a?
It is available as an ebook, and that is what I did. And dear God, like that's why I said I wound up skipping a lot of the footnotes and a lot of the end notes, because it's impossible. Like, I'm blind as it is, so like I'm just like trying to find a page. So I don't know if you guys can see this, if I like tilt it this way. It's like ridiculous. And that's why I said like maybe it would have been more like digestible, to use like Abby's words, if it was, I don't know, like maybe like less information, or if like the font or like spacing was different. Like it's just so overwhelming. Like I feel like those kids, when you try to suggest that they read, like Michael Grant's Gone, and they see the size of the book and they're like, I can't do it, and you're like, but it's great. Like that's what it felt like. And I think when you, Jen, sent out that message, like I think, and you were like, all the footnotes, blah, 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 blah. I'm thinking that the footnotes were going to be similar to like the footnotes you get like in manga almost, like, like when you're reading and then like the author like will randomly have like a side panel where they say something like witty and you're like, ha, 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 where it gives you a little bit of information, but it's witty and snarky. And she did have some footnotes and some endnote bits that were like that. But for the most part, like Krista was saying, it was like justification. It was like, we're not sure if Lovelace ever met, whatever this dude was who's best friend with Babbage, but we can kind of assume that maybe they did. And I'm just like, I don't care. I just want to see the fun things with his, like, I think he had a steam train or something. Like, I'm like, I just want to keep going. Like, I don't care whether they met or didn't meet. Like, I'll care later once the story's over. And it just kept happening. Like, I liked her snarky footnotes and endnotes where she was just saying witty, hilarious things. But the informational bits in the middle of the story were killing me. And the font was small, and there was just too many words in a page. From, like, a librarian. Like, that's a real serious thing to say. Too much words.
I could accept for the sake of this story if there were historical inaccuracies. Like, I wasn't reading this. I appreciated the things that I did learn as a result of reading this, but I wasn't reading it to necessarily, like, this is never a source that I'm going to cite. You know what I'm saying? So for me, I'm like, no, it's fine. I can just accept the fact that these people existed enough in the same universe that you can draw them together. And then if I'm like, wait, I wonder if they ever met, I could also look things up too, or if it was provided at the end.
Which actually, I think I really love the fact that it is now a citable source. It has all of the primary, like not all of, but like tons of primary resources, like research in the back with the actual like letters where you're reading the interplay between the two of them. And I think she also did, like, she looked into it, wrote the comic, and then discovered that there was great justification for her being a mathematical genius on par and like a partner with Babbage. So I think that this is also like her discovery and her becoming a scholar of the two of them, even if, do you know what I mean? And it's like, I think it's a really cool example of what a non-professional, this isn't a tenured history professor that's doing this. She's an animator, and she went and did all of this research and pulled up all these primary resources and then went through all of the, she's kind of like Sarah Vowell, like in that she is like reading through all of that correspondence and drawing these fantastic conclusions. And I thought it kind of could have been two books. Like, it could have been the comic, and then she could have written I would have read an entire book of just her being like, and then this person said this, because she's like, my favorite historians like talk about people in the past, and it's always juicy gossip. And this is like the juiciest of juicy gossip, and she did like a super good job.
Yeah, I think that
Go ahead.
I would have appreciated that information more if it was synthesized in a way similar to like a Sarah Vowell, whereas this doesn't have that same vibe to me. I just wanted to read the comic, and like there was like not that connection. Sorry to interrupt you and then derail everything.
I'm muted. You're good. I was muted. I was trying to tell you that it was fine, but it ended just fine. I learned, I didn't know anything about it. Like I knew like that there was an Ada Lovelace Day, but I had no idea about any of the stuff. I didn't know that she was Lord Byron's daughter, nothing. I knew none of it going into it. And so I just thought I loved that. I actually like ordered in a bunch of picture books about her and her childhood, and like was like doing like a little like this, and so I did like, and then I actually put them on the Tumblr too, so because I was like looking up pictures of the what's her name, the other author that shows up in here that's like
I love that
just
whole
like
bit. That whole
with the
scene is
hair.
funny.
Oh, it's the George woman? I
Yes.
haven't open to that. That was
I
my
love
favorite
her.
section. And I love the one where you have to like
Yes.
to follow the dialogue. There's 2 full spreads like that.
Yeah.
That was my favorite section. Like I loved that section the most because she was just like so hapless. She's like, yeah, my friend George, my friend's manuscript, and then she's like, if it gets ripped into bits, and she's like, my friend is going to be freaking out about it.
And like, granted, while I loved the part that you had to turn. She was hilarious, but the part where you had to turn, like when she was walking through the bit, now remember, I'm reading this on an e-reader, so I immediately start turning the book, and it's turning with me, and I'm like, but wait, I can't, and I'm reading this at the theater, so there's like a show going on, I'm trying to like half listen through the headset, because I've got a change coming, while like turning this book like in my head, and people are like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm trying to read it, but it keeps moving, and so then I held it, and I just started going like this.
Don't you have a lock button? Isn't there like a lock?
But like I was so invested in this because that was my favorite scene, and I didn't even think about it. It was like
put it on a table and then walk around the table like
it was a really big table. And then I would like hear it, and I was like, wait, I have to go change Randy, and I'd come back and I just sort of like go like this, like while trying to read. It was pretty brilliant. Like I kind of wish I could have watched myself attempting to read this, but that was definitely like my favorite bit. Like it was fantastic. Well, next to the wrecking ball one, but it was really fantastic. I was very happy with it.
Next to the what one?
The one, I guess it's the same. I guess it's all the same scene. See, and that's the thing. It broke up so strange, but it's where she first shows up, and it's like that other guy that they're not sure, and he had like a wrecking ball, like the steam train guy, and he was like wrecking balling.
I think that was a different scene.
Was it a different scene?
I know what you're talking about.
Okay.
I think it was earlier in the book.
It might have been.
I think.
Same one.
But
Is it this one, Kim?
yeah, that scene. And I think it was on the same. It was the very beginning of that, though, right?
Yeah,
Wasn't it?
and that was a long one.
It was very long. But the whole thing, the wrecking ball, guys. You know.
Crystal, can you hold it up and talk, or Mylene, can you hold it up and talk so it hits you, so we can see it? Wait, Mylene's doing it. Mylene, talk.
I'll hold, you talk.
You talk, Mylene.
Why? No, why?
No, because if I start to talk, then it becomes my face and not Babbage came in like a wrecking ball. So who's on it? Who's got the wrecking ball?
Like a wrecking ball.
Isn't it the other guy, the bad boy that they like?
I can't remember that guy's name, but I remember that was one of the footnotes that I read. Ike? Like Argentina?
Everyone's scrambling.
I know. Well, I remember that in the footnotes, they said he was a very close friend of Babbage, and there was never any proof that he had met, what's her name? Ada? But she, like, assumed they had. Like, I just remember that being one random footnote that I read. But I can't remember his name, but I think he was involved with steam trains. I don't remember.
He's got the tall hat. He's the spread that I showed up earlier, where he has this whole like big, it's a wall of text and then his hat and him. I loved how is it Queen Victoria that they're talking to? Because I loved all of the scenes with the Queen, how she's like got this elaborate font and just like
She's like, we must take over the world, blah, 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 take over all the things. It was great.
I will say, I really, really liked the person from Porlock comic. The one where Ada Lovelace is the one who makes him forget. Like, she's the visitor that makes him forget this poem that he's writing. Because, like, I had heard that story before, and I really appreciated, like, I was like, oh, that's a really funny, like, oh, she's the interrupter. But it was really confusing because it is a 3-page spread, and it kicks off the Pocket universe. And so then I was like, oh, it's so short. Like, is that it? Is that the end? Whereas I preferred the long ones, like the one with the George lady and the Alice in Wonderland one, the ones that were a little bit longer.
Where you could really kind of get into it and get into the flow of it. And I think when she got into the flow of it, the footnotes were shorter because for the most part, like they weren't as like sometimes they had quotes and stuff inside of them, but there wasn't as much instant information dump inside of them. This is the spread that I was talking about. That's him.
It says IKB, which is where I got Ike from.
Is Isambard Kingdom Brunel? Is that? Yes.
Isambard is a great name.
There were amazing names in all of this. I loved George though. George was fantastic.
I would also like to say for the record, just so everyone knows, I did no crap about either of these people. Like, I had never heard of Ada, I'd never heard of Babbage, so like when you picked this book, I was like, okay, but like those names meant absolutely nothing to me. And so I'm reading, like I had no background, I was like, oh, comic, yay, because I was still like on my roller girl high. And you don't even understand. Like the tears when I got to the end of that.
Did you read
for absolutely no reason? No, but I have it. It's literally on my desk at work, and I was like, I have a feeling that I'm going to love this. But so I'm reading, and that's when I think I appreciated the footnotes in the very beginning because I had no context. Like as far as I knew, she was making all this stuff up. But it was really fascinating to learn, and I was like, Ada was a little promiscuous. There's that scene where she was on the couch, and I was like, whoa, what's going on? I was like, this is great.
I loved that. I was like, yes, Ada, get it. Like, it was so, and it's
like,
so satisfying going, like, and getting to the end of her arc and being like, Sad Town, like, opium, like, cancer, and like, being, but like, and then knowing that happened, you're just like, go girl, like.
Yeah, her whole story, I think, was one of my favorite parts in the beginning of the book, like, you know, just and how they like her, you know, her mom and her father and the poetry and how they wanted to like, you know, make sure that she never went that way, which is why they chose mathematics because, you know, there was nothing poetic about it, and I was like, this is great. And then I thought the Pocket universes were also going to be, like, I thought they would be just complete fabrication. Like, I was just prepared for them. So I think, which is why for the longest time when I kept seeing her with this pipe, I'm like, they have to make a Sherlock Holmes reference. Like, that has to be where this is going, and I'm just waiting for the Watson, and it never came.
There was a footnote that she did smoke a pipe, right?
For real?
Yeah.
In real life?
Yeah.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and
I
I think that like the ones that we're saying we liked had like an arc to them. There was like into the looking glass, out of the looking glass, and there was trapped, like new character trapped in with them, doesn't know them anymore. Like they actually had like they had a plot to them that was not like that was made up and also based on real people, but like it was like the pacing was better for those parts because it naturally followed like an arc.
I did like the little bit of her where she's like, I have to just put some poetry into my math, and everyone was like, no, and she's like, just a little bit, and she's like, a little bit of math, a little bit of poetry, a little bit more poetry. Let me just look at some poetry. I thought that was really funny.
Yeah, and like the drawing of her face, like you can just see her like sort of getting more distressed, like as she's like is buying, she's like, and it's brilliant. Like it was short, I think, I can't remember. And it's so sad because I definitely read this like yesterday. But there were some like it was really fun. Oh, is that it? There it is? There it is. The little bit.
Oh, Mylene, you went away.
Come back, Mylene. She was showing a little bit.
No, it was so perfect. Where did she go?
I'll be back.
I hope she knows she's gone. I'm gonna text her. You guys can keep talking.
Okay.
I really liked the Footman. He was one of my favorites, and I was just trying to find it. It was this one, where he comes for the very logical man comes for tea, and so the Footman is asking him all the questions, and he's just answering with yes or no. It's like, would you like tea, coffee, or tea? Yes. So you want both? How do you? And essentially, like, breaks his brain because asks a question that you can't answer yes or no to, and he has this whole bit. Be a footman, they said. You have the legs for it, they said. There's no thinking at all, they said. And that was, I laughed out loud. And also that at the very beginning of that bit, I don't know if you can see it, he's reading the Dick Lightning Footman Detective, which he like alludes to or in another one of the comics. It's like, oh, you're a writer? Have you ever considered the character Dick Lightning, Footman Detective? And then later he's reading this, and I just thought he's a really funny character.
I think that was in the George one where Dick Lightning, Footman Detective came up. I think that was in George's bit. So yeah, and those are really funny. And it was like a robot, and it like fell over. It was great. I loved it. I also 2 thumbs up that scene.
Wait, and Mylene, you also you found something, and we're going to show it to us before you disappeared. What was it? And you have to talk while.
Oh no, it was while Kim was talking, she was talking about it was Abby. A little bit more poetry, a little bit more math, and then so I found that scene with it, and then as I was doing that, it went away. But that was all. There was nothing to it. It was big enough to see it while people were still talking.
Crystal, you had said that you had found somebody that you think that you'll be able to like sell this book to kids.
No, just one kid, maybe. And it might be a bit of a stretch because, okay, so I am a big fan of just when kids are somewhere with, like, their binders and stacks of books and things like that, just, like, kind of picking up whatever it is that they're reading. Because I feel like, one, it helps me know more about who they are as a person. So this particular student is a 7th grader, so he's not someone I have in class. But he was on my mock trial team. He's a very, like, literal kind of kid. He's very straight-laced and matter-of-fact. And he had 4 books, and they were all about science in various forms. And so I was thinking that this might be a good book to recommend to him because I think he would really love all of the, like, mathy, sciencey bits about it, but it would step him outside his comfort zone a little bit. I don't know how comfortable he would be with, like, the graphic novel portion of it. So he's someone that I'm going to recommend this for because I think that whereas with most 7th graders it would be like, oh no, the historical math and science part would be the part that's a little bit more uncomfortable. For him, I think he's going to eat up these footnotes and all of the endnotes and all of that and think that that's really great, and I think that the comic part of it is what's going to step him outside his comfort zone. So I think I'm going to recommend this book to him. So
I wonder if that's because are we all predominantly fiction readers and not nonfiction readers?
On the rare occasion I read an adult book, I'll read a nonfiction adult book.
I'm
opportunity.
Similar. Well, I kind of read a mix when I read adult books. But like I really like those like Sarah Vowell books or like I read a fair amount of nonfiction.
I won't usually sit down and read a whole nonfiction book. Like obviously I'll do a lot of independent research, but it's usually just articles or usually things online if I'm going to do some kind of specific research on something, as opposed to it's been a while since I would sit down and commit myself to a whole nonfiction book. Oh, that's not like Sarah Vowell or something that's a little bit more digestible.
Yeah, I think I'm the same way. Like I typically even shy away from historical fiction, and like not necessarily on purpose, just because I tend to find myself like I don't know, like spacing out in it, but I just got I subscribe to Owl Crate now, so I just got an Owl Crate box, and it was like a couple months ago, and it was a historical fiction book about the Brontes, and I was like, I'm not gonna like this. I haven't even read a Brontes book, and then sure enough, I read I know, I'm the worst librarian ever. I have not read a Brontes. I haven't even watched the movies on Netflix. Okay. I haven't even watched Netflix movies, but I read this book and I was like, this is great! And it was great in a very subtle, low-key kind of way. Not typically I'm I'm a big, I need stuff. And this was really good in a low-key kind of ish way. So I'm just now starting to creep into historical fiction, but nonfiction for the most part, unless I have to read it for school or again research articles or whatever, whatever's in SLJ or Voya or whatever. I don't read it.
Why do you ask, Jen?
I will need to unmute myself to tell you instead of just talking, because I can remember to do that like an adult who's running this thing and has been for the last 6 months. It's fine. Because I feel like this would be, I think it would be tough to sell it. I think upper middle school, I'll be able to maybe pitch this to. High school, I might have an easier time with, but I'm thinking of those kids who really like the I Survived series and what they could grow into, and this might be an interesting step in there. But yeah, I think it's going to kind of take a particular person. Although I would kill to see a movie of this.
Oh yeah.
That would be absolutely fantastic. I would love that 2 itty bitty pieces.
Or it did seem very excuse me.
Oh, Abby, you're dead.
Never mind. It seems like it would be a good miniseries. All the different chunks, you know what I mean? Or a procedural. Like Lovelace and Babbage,
I wanted more
solving
of,
a computer bug, a steampunk computer bug.
Would watch. Yeah, or even I hate or even a theater thing, where that little episodic, a web series would be super great. Where it's little but I wanted little story arcs. I wanted a big bad of the week, essentially. I wanted my Buffy villain. I wanted the werewolves and the hyenas and the witch. I wanted a thing for each arc, and I didn't. What?
If it was a web series like the Lizzie Bennet Diaries, which I am freakishly obsessed with, I will rewatch Lizzie Bennet Diaries every 3 days, just
There's
because I never get
did
tired of it.
Did you read the book that's about that?
No.
That's not.
I know she.
I want to read that.
Me too.
I want to read that. We should
that
do
might
that.
have to be on our bit.
This is kind of grown up Dear America.
Yeah.
For kids who like Dear America, it's well, this is kind of a weird alt comic about similar things that you might enjoy. You said I Survived, but I feel it's similar to those kids that are just plowing through similar kind of oh my gosh, I can't talk today. I'm gonna just mute myself and cough.
Oh, buddy. But it's also it's the end notes and the footnotes are dense. Do you know what I mean? There's so much information, and it's very upper level. It talks about the jokes in it are very scholarship and referential.
Yeah.
To academic people yelling at each other. So I don't know, I feel upper middle school and high school
definitely
is probably
high school.
about as young. And I immediately, when I think most of you at least know of this person, not everyone who's gonna watch this is fine, but I as soon halfway through this book, I logged on to my Amazon account, purchased it, and shipped it to Craig in Florida. I was like, this is for you.
Here you go, nerd. Hi, Craig.
Yeah.
That was amazing. That was my favorite part of this whole conversation so far. Here you go, nerd. That was my favorite part of this conversation so far.
But you know what, though? So I did a weed of juvenile fiction not too long ago. And all of our our Dear America books aren't going out. They aren't circulating. And the school in because there's one elementary school and one middle school, it is so ridiculous. And then one elementary to high school, which barely counts. But so the teacher, it doesn't. So the teacher gives this assignment, and they have I want to say it's maybe like 4 or 5 months, but they have this like very dedicated time span where they have to read different genres of books. Like they can pick whatever book they want, but it has to fit in the genre, which I think is a great assignment actually. But then they had their historical fiction like section, and the kids would come in like you would think someone had just hit their dog. They were like, I have to get some historical fiction books. Do you have any? Like, I mean, like, you would think the world had just crumbled before them, and I worry, like, with stuff.
Is that because American Girl dolls are no longer the gateway drug to
Yes.
historical fiction?
I believe so. Also, we recently weeded our juvenile fiction, and we have, the genre stickers, and basically if it had the little Davy Crockett hat sticker on it, it was like going to Crystal to take to the middle school for her classroom library. Like, we obviously tried to keep like a well-rounded like representation of different historical events in our historical fiction, but just the amount that we had it wasn't going out at all. So a lot of them are over at the middle school with Crystal over there now.
Yeah, we like our side note, the American Girl doll bit. A librarian, I don't know if anybody saw it on Storytime Underground, librarian Heather, I don't want to say her last name because that's weird, but she does an American Girl tea party, and she had 50 girls and their 50 dolls at this American Girl tea party. So I was like, OMG. But I did notice when I was going through the American Girl like books, like when I was doing this weed, because they were right there at the beginning, like like we just have them all under American Girl. Only certain American Girl dolls are being read, or certain American Girl books are being read, and other American Girl books were not, and I was obviously pissed and left them.
Is Felicity still going out or no?
Because
I could see as like a Hamilton for younger kids, you could pitch Felicity.
No, it was the ones that you would assume weren't going out, like all of the ethnic ones were not going. Like no one wanted them. Like right.
But I loved Abby.
No one wanted Abby. And then there was like Kaya. Kaya's the Native American one, I think. Nobody wanted either.
What about Josefina? She's also awesome.
Josefina was like a little bit. Like it was like, we had like 2 or 3. And I left them all. I was like, screw it.
The company moved into we're completely off topic right now, but the company moved into a direction where it was like, you American Girl, like you are the girl that is in America.
It's not historically based anymore.
It's
so like
not.
the girls are all really into the like girl of today, or the ones that look like you or whatever.
Yeah.
And not so much, like, I don't even know if they're in the catalog anymore. If they are, it's like an abbreviated section, and then it's like, here, buy all this like crap. Not like, here is Kirsten and her like homestead.
Or Samantha and her tiny tea cakes and her teacups, which I was always like, I just wanted the food. I never wanted the dolls. I just wanted like the little play food. And like not in like I want to eat it, like I wanted to collect all of the play food and hoard it like a weirdo. Like that's what I wanted. And it was very specific. Like I wanted tiny food accessories. And possibly some furniture. Like possibly.
I had a Polly Pocket Village in my closet, like as a small child. So I completely understand like the hoarding of things. But like I guess just like so like sliding back sort of into this book and the historical fiction like portion of this book that we were talking about. So like we had that obvious issue with the American Girl dolls that I was personally pissed about. But then you go down a few letters and you hit Dear America. And those, I left them. Like, I left a lot of them, but those weren't going either. And I personally, as someone who loves Little House on the Prairie in a very strange and unusual way, was really upset that, like, no one wanted, I was like, this is Little House on the Prairie in a book. Like, why don't you want to know about them? Why don't you want to know about homesteaders? I don't understand.
Have you read The Birch Bark House?
No, but I read Hattie Big Sky. Have you read that? Because that's great. You read it, Crystal?
Yay.
What's the book you were talking about, Jen? What's it called?
The Birch Bark House, and it's written by a Native American, author, basically about her historic, like the historical basis of it is her tribe that she is enrolled in. And it's like it's the same kind of thing in Little House on the Prairie, where it's the description of what they're doing to like gather food and where they live, but it's like it's folded into the descriptions of what's happening to the family. And it has I keep making this motion. I'm forever making snails tonight. Sorry guys. But it's folded into like the descriptions of what's happening, like the plot points of the book, and it does it pulls that same like heartstrings, like it grabs you, and then things happen to the family, and so it's so good. The whole series is just
must
really,
read.
Really good.
I want the title. Send me the title of that because I want
Same.
that.
Put it in the little like box.
So getting back to this as well. I do like that she is like the fiercest of all fierce ladies, and I think that that's really important. I'm currently in the midst of coming up with a project and starting a project with my classes where they're deciding who should. I know at this point it stinks because when I started making this project, they hadn't decided who was going to replace Jackson on the 20, and now they have. And not that it stinks that it's Harriet Tubman. I think that that's awesome, but like the whole premise of the project was like, oh yes, you have to decide which fierce lady is it going to be, and now it's like, well, they've already decided, so why are we doing this project? I'm like, man.
You should pick somebody else that they should replace, and then you should be like,
no,
this is the next one.
Because it should be Jackson. Jackson needs to go. But that's
like in addition to no, absolutely Jackson is not. Like no, like another one can shuffle off. No, this is the picture I was thinking of when you said the fiercest. Look at that face.
Here, wait, I had this one. This is the picture I was thinking of. I'm the high priestess. This one, and she's just. So I appreciated that too, because I'm really in this midst of like trying to. I just got all of those Abby donated a really cool book to my classroom library that we're using for this project, and there's a couple other books that I just bought that really focus on fierce ladies in American history, because I don't think I've done a good job of really highlighting that, because it tends to be that typically what's taught in a history class is the white dudes that have changed the world, and I think I need to do a better job of diversifying my curriculum, which I think I'll be much more equipped to do in my second year as opposed to my first year, where I was relying a lot on kind of the curriculum that was already in place, and now I'm like, oh no, I'm going to change some things. So that's one of the things I really liked about this book, and I think it's partially because I'm in that mindset right now where I'm just like, no, I love smart, like unapologetically smart, fierce ladies, and I think that she is just such a powerhouse in this whole story. And I think that was really, really great to read, too. And also knowing that, like, also really great that she is a real person, and that's awesome.
Have you guys read? Sorry, I know Abby, you unmuted yourself and you want to say something too. So this works for. I think this would be kind of cool to do excerpts of this for a classroom. Like you wouldn't do the whole thing, and you probably don't want to have her having her shenanigans on the couch necessarily in 7th grade, I'd say. But whatevs. It depends on your population and your parents of your population. But I think it would actually be cool to take sections of this and like do that, and then one of the letters at the end. I think like in small chunks it could be very cool and very very helpful for somebody who wasn't maybe engaged, like an alternate textbook kind of a thing, rather than just go ahead.
No, I would agree with that wholeheartedly, and I thought that was really I think there are pieces of it that are really great. I worry about working with it wouldn't work with my curriculum anyway, but like working with 8th graders, it wouldn't work because and so much of the language I got lost in, like the intricacies of, because I'm not really a math and science person, even in my fields of history are much more humanities based than they are math and science, and so I got lost in some of that. And I guess that's also where some of the footnotes were helpful, because some of the language was difficult to understand, and I was like, okay, what does this mean? So I don't know. Yeah.
I was just gonna say I'm taking a like coding class, like not a how to, but how to program using coding, plan programs using coding. And I just thought it was really interesting that that people were developing basically computer programs before the technology of like computers were a thing. And just like how um, the skills that you need for like computer science and programming are more like logic based problem solving skills as opposed to like hard technology skills. Like you don't necessarily need to know how to use the thing in order to like solve problems, but you need the like mindset of a problem solver. So it's like she's writing computer programs for a computer that doesn't even exist. Like I thought that was really interesting.
And I really liked the explanation in the back for the it was one of the at the end thing. So but like the explanation for Boolean logic was really like she did diagrams for it at the very end, and it was really cool how it actually broke down and I don't know if I just didn't pay attention in that part of library school, but like it gave like the diagram for like you get these two, like the split, the and versus the or versus the like and the not, like she diagrammed those, and I was like, oh my god, this makes all of the sense, thank you. Like, not that I didn't already know how it works, but it would have been so nice to have that as an additional visual aid. So I think that there's cool stuff that I'm totally gonna mine from this book for a while, especially because like with STEM programming in libraries or STEAM programming in libraries, because this is definitely arts and math and computers all having a baby together. So it's very cool.
So about that Boolean bit, so when I first saw like when the word Boolean first showed up, I was like, ooh, like Boolean searches. I know what that is. But then like I instinctively was like, wait, they must be talking about some different kind of Boolean because they're talking about building computers. So every time the word Boolean came up, I was like instantly upset because I'm like, my Boolean and your
It's the
Boolean are
same.
obviously different Booleans. I know, like I know, but like I'm saying, like remember, I was half reading this, like I was just reading the comic parts, like I wasn't reading anything else, and they didn't explain that in the comic parts, and so there'd be occasions where they would have like a sheet of paper and it would have all this like math mumbo jumbo, and I'm like, that's not my Boolean, and then I would just like keep going, and then somewhere along the way I was like, I think there's only one kind of Boolean, and maybe we're all talking about the same kind. Like, I mean, you don't understand how upset I was. I was like, I know how to Boolean search, and they're talking about some math crap, and I was so upset. Like, I was like really, really worked up about it, and I was like, maybe I jumped too soon. Okay, go ahead, Jen. I need to see this.
So all the way in the back, so she does the diagram, and she actually does them using pieces of machines. And so it's like, oh, that's how it works to physically put something together, and it's the same way, like this is not, and so this disrupts it, and so that's why it's a triangle. And then this is an AND gate, so you're pulling results from this word and results from this word, and all of those results get dumped into this one line.
It's too much.
Does that make sense?
Too much.
No? Okay. So my visual little brain was like,
ooh. That whole yeah, you were, ooh, and I was like, what does all this mean? Like, it was like, there are too many words on this page, there's little charts, and I feel like I'm in like geometry class, and I'm feeling this. It was stressful. It was a problem for me. But I could also see the hilarity in my problem. End scene.
I've been thinking about what to say in regards to who I could possibly give this to, and truthfully, I don't think I could give this to anyone. I'm glad you guys know that one guy that you sent the book to. That's awesome, and he probably is a nerd. Good for him. But for this book to work, you need to have a lot of back knowledge about a lot of things before you can understand what's going on. I mean, all of us have degrees. We've gone to lots and lots of schooling. I can't imagine even a math-based kid would be like, yeah, I understand the historical importance of these people in the 1840s if I don't know who these people are, right? Like there's just a lot of, and so I'm thinking if a kid did that, then they would imagine that the other people, even though they know are real, are maybe fictionalized. So there's not an element of historical like significance to them necessarily. And there's parts where like I thought it was gonna be. I didn't find that there was like a rising action per se. I was like, okay, it's just happening. And then it stops happening. I'm just like, there was no like, oh, go, Ada, go. Oh, that just, okay. Actually, one of the things that I enjoyed the most was when she got into an argument with her shadow. And I was like, oh, something's happening. Something happened. And then, I mean, the George part was great too, but that was just like, by the time I got there, I was like, I don't know, who would I give this to? I can't even express whether or not I like. At that point, I was like, I wasn't even sure if I liked it or not. So I think this is great for, right now, our library is doing a lot of programming for older adults that are kind of going back into their youth, like with coloring and that kind of stuff. I think this would be great as an adult book read for people who have a kind of understanding of that time period or an interest in getting to know graphic novels that they're not currently, like a lot of people like think that graphic novels are very, very childlike. This would be a really good start to, oh, this is what you could learn from a graphic novel, didn't you know? And then the sense of like the kind of scholarly sensibility wouldn't get lost, I think. But do I know a person who I would give it to, even as an adult? I'm glad I read it though. Thanks, Jen.
I think that's great. I wouldn't have. I was also thinking about who can I give this book to, and like the closest that I could come to was like maybe like the robotics kids, like at the high school. Like we've got a kid who's in robotics, and he wants to come and teach a coding program at our library, which I'm actually very hesitant about because I don't think he knows what he's doing. But like this is obviously going to be someone. Yeah, this is obviously going to be someone who has the background knowledge, because I think you're right, Mylene. Like, because I didn't even know that these people were people before reading this. Like, I had not heard of them, or if I had heard of them at some point, like in conversation, it didn't stick. So, like, there was so much that was just, like, way over my head. And that's why I wound up skipping a lot of the footnotes and the endnotes, because I'm like, I don't know what you're saying. Like, I don't know what you're saying. I don't understand, and I know I'm smarter than this. So, oh, puppy. But I think that, you know, the idea of giving the book to an adult, because like where I am, you know, in my community, there are a lot of adults who are entrepreneurs, who've started their own, you know, like company who do a lot with computers. Like there's one man who's currently trying to create this like computer like programming class that extends from middle school through high school, offers scholarships. You've got the college involved. Yeah, so I mean like this one man is doing something very large, and I think adults like that, and like in my community, because there are a lot of them, would probably really appreciate this book. And I had not thought about that. I'm thinking about kids, and I'm like, you know, I've got the highest kids that I see are like currently I've got some kids who are like in my anime program, and if I gave them this book, they'd probably throw it at me. But you know, like
because it is heavy.
Yeah. But you know, like they aren't really. I don't really have high schoolers. Like we've got the pages, but I don't even really have older kids to give this book to. But the adults, I had never thought of that.
Who are truly young at heart. Like they would be the young adults at heart.
They really would be. So duly noted. Like, we don't own it, but maybe I'll buy it and give it to some grown-ups.
Like all of the like
subtle plug, subtle name drop.
History, like all like you know what I mean? I feel like that's like a stereotype, but it's like a stereotype for a reason. That like if like an old guy comes in, like there's like a 50% chance he's gonna take out like some nonfiction like war book.
Justin?
Yeah, your husband. So it's like here, this looks very silly. There's comics, but like you're gonna learn a lot too. You know what I mean? Like it is like expanding the graphic novel
and it's
empire.
written by a woman and illustrated by a woman. Do you know what I mean? It's about Lovelace and Babbage, but it's also like it's by a woman who's in like a tech illustration, like an art and tech field, which I thought was so cool that it was like another woman from the same kind of field. I like to sneak lady authors in my recommendations like that sometimes. So yes, absolutely, Abby. Yes.
Karen Romano Young would really like this book. She is an author. She lives in Bethel. She wrote Doodlebug, which is a novel in doodles. It's a middle grades, I think, is her. I'm waiting for Abby to like nod and agree, or someone to nod in agreement. I think she's middle grades is where you would classify her books. But she is wonderful and fabulous and does a lot of stuff with science. She actually, it's funny that because I hadn't considered adults either, but she is actually someone that I could potentially hand this book to, and she would love it for all of its nerdy research aspects, and also the and for storytelling, and for all of the illustrations, because she does all of her own illustrations as well, even in her novels. Actually, and I'm really glad that you guys brought, like, Mylene, I'm really glad you brought that up, because I think that she would be a perfect person for me to loan this book to.
Excellent.
So I wanted to, so for people who didn't wade through all of the end notes and the appendices, so they did have, so in the primary resources section, they had one of her calling cards. So it's an actual, like, it's a photocopy, it's a scan or whatever, of the Countess of Lovelace's calling card, and then on the back, her handwriting, and it says "very interesting." Isn't that just like, that's just like super freaking cool? And I like, obviously her reaction as an author when she found that was like, and so that's why it ended up in the book, and it's also, it's very specific how it's placed, because they have the one, and then you reveal that "very interesting" is on the next page, and I was like, you little nerd, I love you. Like, it was just very, like, I think that, like, I really just, this made me want to hang out with this author, like, all the time. Like, I really just, like, want to be best friends with her now. And that's a good place to be in at the end of a book, to be like, we could go and eat some cookies in a cafe together. Like, that's cool. Like, I'm glad that we're at that place. Does anybody have any closing thoughts about the book? I think we actually pretty wrapped it up. That was really, with the Mylene bomb, the revelation at the end of that about, like, give it to adults, which is hilarious because it is an adult graphic novel. Like, that's where my library has shelved it. So yeah, everybody is like, did the World Catalog have that, like, copy cataloging have that locked down? The other librarians knew what they were talking about. So that's good. Okay. Well, we got there by the end of this. So,
can I say what I picked for next time?
Yeah.
Because I picked it ahead of time in case the people that watch this wanted to read the book before next time. I was going to do a nonfiction book, and then I got this book, and I said, nope, we're not doing a nonfiction book. So we're going to read Denton Little's Death Date by Lance Rubin, and it's very funny. And Kim's freaking out. Has she read it already?
No, but it's like literally on a list. Like, I'm like, okay, this is literally going to be one of the 3 books that I read. I'm so excited.
So that's the plan. It's like a dark comedy, and I'm very excited to read it.
Sweet. Thank you for joining us, Zero viewers. We'll see you next time.